He should not have asked me that in his own kitchen. But Lucas did. He leaned against the counter, half laughing, half serious, and said, "So tell me straight, man. Were you joking about my mom, or were you actually looking at her like that?" My whole body locked. There are moments when your life splits in two so fast you can almost hear it. One version of me laughed it off, said I was drunk, stupid, nothing more. The other version told the truth. Not the whole truth. Just enough to ruin everything. And the worst part was Marissa was standing right there. She had her back to us at the sink, one hand wrapped around a dish towel like she was giving me room to escape. But I saw the way her shoulders went still. I saw the tiny pause in her breathing. She was listening. Lucas grinned like he expected me to turn it into a joke, and I opened my mouth. Then Marissa turned slightly and looked at me over her shoulder. Not angry, not embarrassed, just waiting. And somehow that was worse, because in that one look, I knew she remembered exactly what I'd said the week before. And I knew I had not been joking. So why did it suddenly feel like she was asking the question too? I wish I could say I was the kind of guy who always knew when to walk away. I wasn't. My name is Tyler Brooks. I was 24, living alone in a cheap apartment outside Fresno, fixing broken phones for people who always acted like their cracked screens were life or death emergencies. My days were simple. Same counter, same tools, same tired customers. I didn't hate my life. I just didn't feel much inside it. That was before Lucas started working at the shop. He was 22, loud in a way that somehow never got annoying, the kind of guy who could make a dead Tuesday shift feel less dead. We got along fast. Same music, same sense of humor, same habit of making fun of customers the second they walked out the door. He made work easier. Maybe that's why I said yes when he invited me over for dinner the first time. I did not know that one stupid sentence would change everything after that. The first night I went to his house, I noticed the difference before I even sat down. The place felt warm, not fancy, not perfect, just lived in. A real home. Family photos on the walls, a faded baseball glove on a shelf, the smell of food already in the air. Then Marissa walked in with a bowl of chips, and something in me shifted so fast, it made me feel ashamed. She wasn't dressed to impress. That's what got me. No trying, and no performance. Just jeans, dark top, hair pulled back, this calm kind of confidence that made the room feel steadier the second she entered it. She looked at me like I was a guest worth welcoming, not just some kid her son dragged home from work. "Tyler, right?" she said. I stood too fast and almost knocked my knee into the coffee table. She smiled like she noticed and was kind enough not to mention it. Dinner should have been normal. It mostly was. Lucas talked too much. I joked back. Marissa laughed at the right parts. But every time she asked me something, really asked, not polite small talk, I felt myself paying more attention than I should have. Where I grew up, why I never finished school, whether I liked fixing phones or just ended up there. Most people asked questions so they could wait for their turn to speak, and she listened like the answer mattered. That messed with me more than how beautiful she was. After dinner, Lucas and I played games in the living room while she cleaned up. We were a couple beers in, yelling at the screen, talking trash, and then Lucas went to grab something from the kitchen. I leaned back, still staring at the TV, and said the sentence that should have stayed in my head. "Your mom's hotter than girls I've dated." The room went quiet for half a second. Then Lucas laughed so hard, he nearly dropped his controller. "Dude, that is disgusting." I laughed too. Because what else was I supposed to do? But when I looked toward the kitchen, Marissa was there at the edge of the doorway drying a plate. And she had heard me. I expected shock, or offense, or that tight, fake smile women use when a man says something stupid and they want to end it fast. Instead, her eyes met mine and held, just for a second, maybe two. Then the corner of her mouth moved like she was stopping a smile before turning away. That look stayed with me all the way home. It stayed with me the next morning at work. It stayed with me through every cracked iPhone screen and every battery swap and every dumb customer story Lucas told while I pretended I was listening. Then 3 days later, she followed me on Instagram. I nearly dropped my phone when I saw it. Her profile wasn't what I expected. No filtered selfies, no attention-seeking posts, just small things, coffee and morning light, a hospital badge on a counter, a sunset over Fresno rooftops. Lucas in 2 pictures, both from years apart. In both, as she was looking at him the same way, like he was the center of her whole world. That should have shut something down inside me. It didn't. I followed her back. 10 minutes later, she liked an old hiking photo of mine. Then another. Nothing dirty, nothing obvious, but it was enough. That Friday, Lucas invited me over again. Pasta this time. I should have said no. Instead, I changed my shirt twice before leaving my apartment. That night felt different the second I walked in. Not because of anything anyone said, because of what had already been said and never taken back. Marissa greeted me at the door before Lucas even got there. She smiled like she had a private thought she was keeping to herself. At dinner, Lucas was the same as always. Talking, eating too fast, making jokes. Marissa was the same too. Calm, easy, warm. And only now I caught things I hadn't let myself notice before. The way her eyes stayed on me when I spoke. The way her voice softened when she asked me questions Lucas never thought to ask. The way she remembered things, small things, like the band I said I liked. The trail near Shaver Lake I'd mentioned once. The fact that I took my coffee black because sugar made it taste fake. That kind of attention is dangerous when your life has been empty longer than you realized. Halfway through dinner, Lucas smirked and said, "You better be careful, Mom. Tyler's already admitted he thinks you're hot." I almost choked. He laughed because to him it was still a joke. Marissa set down her fork, calm as ever. Then she looked at me and said, "Did you mean it?" Lucas barked out a laugh. "No way, you are not helping him." But I couldn't laugh. Well, because she wasn't smiling, not really. There was something else under the question, something quiet and serious and almost fragile. I forced out, "I was being stupid." Her expression changed just a little. Not hurt, not offended. Just disappointed in a way that made no sense. She said softly, and went back to eating. I felt that sound in my chest for the rest of the meal. Later, Lucas ran upstairs to take a call from some girl he'd been trying to impress for a week. I offered to help with the dishes, mostly because I needed air. Marissa was at the sink when I stepped beside her. For a few seconds, all we heard was running water and plates touching ceramic. Then she handed me a glass and said very quietly, "You don't have to lie just because he's in the house." I looked at her, and she kept her eyes on the dish in her hands. My pulse started climbing. "I wasn't trying to disrespect you," I said. "I know. You're his mom. I know that too." There was no anger in her voice. That would have been easier. She dried her hands slowly and finally turned to face me. Up close, she looked tired in a way makeup couldn't hide. Not old, not worn down, just like life had asked too much from her for too long and she had gotten used to carrying it without complaint. Then she said the one thing I still hear in my head when I can't sleep. "It's been a long time since anyone looked at me like I was more than somebody's mother." I forgot how to breathe. She must have seen the panic in my face because She took a step back right away. "That was unfair," she said. "You should go back in there." But I didn't move. And because for the first time, this did not feel like flirting. It felt like standing too close to a wound someone had hidden for years, and the truth came out before I could stop it. "I meant it," I said. Her eyes lifted to mine. The whole kitchen went still. I swallowed and forced myself not to look away. "You're not invisible to me." We both heard Lucas coming back down the stairs. Marissa stepped aside so fast it was like the moment had never happened. By the time he entered the kitchen, she was rinsing plates again, and I was holding a dish towel like an idiot. But something had changed. Not in the room. In me. Because all night after that, even while Lucas sat beside me on the couch, joking like always, I could feel the weight of what I'd said still hanging between me and the kitchen doorway. And when I drove home, there was a message waiting on my phone. Not from Lucas. From her. One line. "If you come back here, Tyler, don't do it unless you're ready to be honest." I read it 3 times with the engine off and my hand still on the key. Then I looked up at the dark windshield and asked myself the question that should have scared me more than it did. What exactly had I already started? I did not answer her that night. I stared at the message until my screen went dark, then lit it up again like the words might change if I kept looking. They didn't. "If you come back here, Tyler, don't do it unless you're ready to be honest." No wink, no joke, no easy way to pretend I was reading too much into it. I drove home with that line stuck in my head like a song you hate, but cannot stop hearing. Honest about what? That I was attracted to her? And she already knew that. That I kept thinking about her when I was at work, when I was in bed, when I was standing in line for coffee, pretending I had a normal life. Maybe that too. But deep down, I knew what she meant. Honest meant I could not hide behind the joke anymore. It meant if I came back, I was not coming back as Lucas's buddy just there for dinner and games. I was coming back as a man who wanted something from a woman he had no right to want. The next morning at the shop, Lucas tossed me a cracked iPhone and said, "You good? You look like you slept in a dumpster." I forced a grin. "Thanks, man. Good to know friendship is alive." He laughed and went back to helping a customer, while I stood there with a screwdriver in my hand and guilt crawling up my spine. It would have been easier if Lucas had been a jerk, and easier if he was careless or fake or the kind of friend you could betray and then call it karma. But he wasn't. He covered for me when I ran late. He saved me the last energy drink in the fridge if he got there first. He remembered stupid details like what bands I liked, what food I hated, what kind of days made me quiet. He trusted me without thinking twice. That made every thought I had about his mother feel worse. I lasted 2 days before I replied. Just 4 words. "What does honest mean?" She answered almost right away. "It means no pretending." I sat there staring at the screen, heart pounding so hard it made me feel stupid. Then another message came. "And no doing this unless you understand what it could cost." I should have stopped there. Instead I typed, "Do you want me to come over?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, and appeared again. Then came the answer that pushed everything forward. "Lucas works late Sunday. If you still want to talk, come after 8. All weekend, I felt split open. Part of me tried to be rational. She was older. She was my friend's mother. She had a whole life behind her. Divorce, a kid, years of responsibility I could barely understand. I was a 24-year-old guy fixing phones and eating takeout in a 1-bedroom apartment with a view of a parking lot. There was no version of this that looked smart from the outside. But another part of me kept hearing her voice in that kitchen. It's been a long time since anyone looked at me like I was more than somebody's mother. That line did something to me, because if I was honest, I knew that feeling too. Not the mother part, the disappearing part, the becoming useful instead of known, and the being around people all day and still somehow unseen. Sunday dragged. I cleaned my apartment for no reason, changed shirts twice, sat on my couch, stood up, sat down again. At 7:40, I almost texted to cancel. At 7:52, I was already in my car. Her house looked different with Lucas gone. Quieter. Smaller somehow. No game sounds from the living room. No shoes kicked by the door. No easy distraction. She opened the door before I knocked twice. For 1 second, neither of us spoke. She had on a soft gray sweater and jeans. Nothing dramatic. No trying too hard. Her hair was down, and for the first time she looked nervous. That made me nervous too. "You came," she said. "You invited me." A tiny smile touched her mouth. "I did." She stepped aside and let me in. The house smelled like vanilla and tea. A low music played somewhere in the background. Not romantic music, just something soft enough to fill the silence without forcing it. On the kitchen table sat 2 mugs and a plate of cookies on a blue ceramic dish that looked old enough to matter. "I made tea," she said, "and I baked too much. You can blame stress." I looked at the cookies. "These are stress cookies?" She gave a quiet laugh. The dangerous kind. That laugh settled me just enough to breathe again. We sat at the table, hands wrapped around warm mugs, talking about nothing at first. Work. Her shift at the hospital. A woman who came into the shop and screamed because her phone screen protector had 1 bubble in the corner. Normal things, safe things. But the safety did not last. Not when it was just us. And not when the whole reason I was there sat between us like a third person. Finally, she set her mug down and said, "I need to tell you something before this goes any further." My stomach dropped. "Okay." She folded her hands together, then unfolded them. "If you are here because I made you feel wanted, that isn't enough." I blinked. "What?" She held my eyes. "You're young. I'm not saying that to push you away. I'm saying it because attention can feel bigger than it is when you haven't had it in a while. And I won't be somebody's exciting mistake." The words landed hard because they were fair. More than fair. They were the exact words I would have respected if they had not made me want her even more. "You think that's what this is?" I asked. "I think loneliness can lie to people." I sat back, jaw tight. Yeah, because part of me knew she was right. Loneliness could make ordinary things feel like fate. A text feel like rescue. A kind look feel like love. I had lived enough empty days to know that. But this was not only that. "No," I said. "Loneliness can lie, but it can also tell the truth." She went still. I kept going before I lost my nerve. "I've dated girls my age. I've done the easy thing. Surface stuff, small talk. Acting like I'm supposed to want the same things they want. None of it lasted because none of it felt real. Then I met you, and in 2 dinners you asked me more honest questions than anyone I've dated in years." Her eyes softened, but she said nothing. I glanced down at the mug in my hands. There was a tiny crack near the handle, repaired so neatly it almost looked like part of the design. "Yet I'm not here because you made me feel wanted for 5 minutes," I said quietly. "I'm here because when you talk to me, I feel like I exist in full. Not just the funny guy at work, not just the dude fixing phones. Me." For a few seconds, the only sound was the clock on the wall. Then she asked, "Do you know what scares me the most?" I shook my head. "That I believe you." Something in my chest tightened. She looked down and let out a slow breath. After my marriage ended, everything in me went into survival mode. Lucas needed stability. Bills needed paying. Shifts needed covering. I stopped asking what I wanted because it felt selfish. She gave a sad little smile. At some point, I stopped being Marissa. I became mom, nurse, the person who keeps things moving. I said nothing. I just listened. That should have been enough, she went on. Some days it was. But sometimes Lucas would leave for school, and the house would go quiet. And I'd stand at the sink, looking out the window and think, if I vanished into thin air, what part of me would people miss? Her voice almost broke on the last word. I reached across the table before I thought better of it. Not fast, not dramatic, just enough to let my hand rest near hers. She looked at it, then at me. I did not touch her until she turned her palm over and let my fingers meet hers. That small contact hit harder than it should have. Maybe because it was careful. Maybe because it felt chosen. I'd miss you, I said. Her throat moved like she was trying to swallow something deeper than emotion. Tyler, she whispered. Oh, you can't say things like that lightly. I'm not. We stayed like that for what felt like a long time. Her hand in mine. Both of us knowing there was still time to step back. Still time to call this a boundary talk and end it before it became betrayal. Then headlights swept briefly across the front window from a passing car, and she pulled her hand back like the light itself had caught us. We have to talk about Lucas, she said. There it was. The name neither of us could keep out of the room anymore. I nodded. I know. No, she said, firmer now. I need you to really hear me. He is not a complication. He is my son. He is not an obstacle between me and a happier life. He is part of me. If this ever makes him feel humiliated or replaced or lied to, in a way he can't recover from, and I won't forgive myself. That was the first moment I fully understood her. Not just the woman I wanted, the mother she would never stop being. And maybe that was the moment this stopped feeling reckless and started feeling serious. I'm not asking you to choose, I said. You might be, eventually. The truth of that sat heavy between us. I looked toward the living room wall where framed family pictures hung in a neat line. In one of them, Lucas looked about 10, grinning with missing teeth, his arm around her waist. She was younger there, but her smile had the same tired strength. On the shelf below the frame sat a little metal keychain shaped like a baseball glove. Cheap, worn, probably nothing to anyone else. To her, probably everything. He loves you, I said. She let out a breath that was almost a laugh. I know. That's what makes this so dangerous. I stood and walked to the shelf before I even knew why. I picked up the little glove keychain and turned it over in my fingers. His? I asked. She nodded. T-ball trophy keychain. He gave it to me when he was 8 because he said moms should get prizes too. I smiled despite myself. That sounds like him. She smiled too, but her eyes looked wet now. I keep it there to remind myself what matters when life gets confusing. I set it back down carefully. Then I turned to face her. This matters too. The second I said it, the room changed. Not because it was dramatic, because it was true. She stood slowly. We were only a few feet apart now. You don't know how this ends, she said. No. You could hate me later. I won't. You can't promise that. Maybe not. I took one step closer. But I can promise I'm not here to use you. She searched my face like she was looking for the weak part, the immature part, the part that would make this easier to dismiss. Maybe she did not find it. Maybe she found her own reflection instead. Because the next thing she did was so small, nobody else would have called it a turning point. She reached up and straightened my collar. Just that. fingers light against my neck. A quiet gesture, so gentle it almost wrecked me. When she let her hand fall, I caught it. "Marissa." My voice came out rough. She closed her eyes for 1 second, then opened them again. "If this happens," she said, "we do it with our eyes open." I nodded. No games." "Yes. No pretending this can stay hidden forever." My chest tightened at that, but I nodded again. "Okay. And no lies between us." "I can do that." She gave me a sad smile. "That's the one part I'm afraid of." Then I made the mistake of looking at her mouth, and she saw it. I should have stepped back. I know that now. Instead, I asked, "Tell me to leave." She did not. That silence was the answer. I moved slowly enough for her to stop me. She didn't. When I kissed her, it was nothing like I had imagined in all the stupid, restless moments since that first dinner. There was no rush in it, no victory, no heat trying to prove itself. It felt careful, almost grieving, like both of us knew the exact line we were crossing and hated how much we wanted to cross it anyway. When we pulled apart, and her forehead rested lightly against mine, "We can still stop," she whispered. I was breathing too hard to lie. "Do you want to?" She opened her eyes. "No." That one word should have felt like triumph. Instead, it felt like standing on the edge of something beautiful and terrible at the same time. Then her phone buzzed on the table. We both jerked back. She looked down at the screen and all the color shifted in her face. "It's Lucas," she said. I felt the blood drain from my own face. "What happened?" She read the message and shut her eyes. "He forgot his charger. He's coming home." Every muscle in my body locked. She looked at me, breathing fast now, all softness gone. "Tyler," she said, voice low and sharp, "you need to leave right now." And as I turned toward the back door, one thought hit me harder than fear. Hey, if this was how it began, how were we ever going to survive what came next? I barely made it out before Lucas pulled into the driveway. 1 second, I was in Marissa's kitchen, with her lipstick still warm on my mouth. The next, I was slipping through the back gate like a thief, my pulse pounding so hard it made my ears ring. I cut across the side yard, ducked past the fence, and reached my car half bent over, like somehow making myself smaller would make me less guilty. I did not start the engine right away. I just sat there, gripping the wheel, staring at the dark shape of her house in the mirror. The porch light came on. Then Lucas walked in, carrying that same easy energy he always had, backpack over one shoulder, phone in his hand, and completely unaware that I had just left through the back like a man doing something he could never explain. I drove home shaking. That night, I did not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw one of two things: Marissa standing close enough to kiss me, or Lucas smiling at work the way he always did, like I was still just his friend and nothing more dangerous than that. By morning, my chest felt packed with wet cement. At the shop, Lucas tossed me a charging cable and said, "Dude, you vanished last night. I almost texted you to come over after my study thing got canceled." I stared at him for half a second too long. Then I forced a shrug. Phone died. I knocked out early. He nodded like that was the most normal answer in the world. That trust almost made me sick. The whole day dragged. I stripped screws, replaced batteries, and smiled at customers. None of it felt real. Around noon, Lucas ordered burgers for us and slid mine across the counter. "Eat," he said. "You look like somebody dumped you before breakfast." I laughed because he expected me to. Then he said the one thing I did not know I needed to hear. "My mom asked about you." My hand stopped over the bag. He kept unwrapping his burger. "Just said you seemed distracted lately. Told me to check if you were okay." I looked down fast so he would not see my face. There it was again. That thing she did, caring in quiet ways, making people feel held without making a show of it. Lucas took a bite and added, "She likes you, man." Not a lot of people make it into round 2 dinner territory. That line followed me the rest of the day. She likes you. He meant it one way. I heard it another. That evening, Marissa did not message me. Neither did I. Maybe we both needed the space. Maybe we were both scared of what nearly happened. Maybe silence felt safer than honesty for one more night. But on the second day, I got a text from her. Not Instagram this time, a real text. I had no idea how much that would shake me until I saw her name on my screen. "Need to talk. Not at the house. Can you meet me after your shift?" I read it twice, then typed back, "Where?" Her answer came a minute later. "The coffee place on Belmont. Back patio, 6:30. I got there early and still found her already sitting outside, a paper cup in both hands. She was wearing her nurse scrubs under a light jacket like she had come straight from work. She looked tired. Beautiful too, but tired in a way that made me want to sit down and listen before I said anything selfish. When I reached the table, she looked up and gave me a small, strained smile. "Hi." "Hi." I sat across from her. Neither of us touched our drinks. For a moment, the traffic on the road behind us did all the talking. Then she said, "We can't keep doing almost." I let out a slow breath. "I know." "No." She shook her head gently. "I don't think you do. Almost is worse than a clear choice. Almost makes liars out of people 1 inch at a time." That hit because it was true. She stared into her coffee before speaking again. "Lucas told me something today." Every part of me went tense. "What?" "He said you're the first friend from work he actually trusts." I looked away. She kept going, softer now. "He said you make long shifts easier. That you don't treat him like a kid. That when life feels stupid, that you help him laugh at it." That was Lucas. Giving loyalty without knowing he was handing over a knife, too. I rubbed a hand over my face. "You're trying to tell me we should stop. I'm trying to tell you this matters enough that whatever we choose, we need to survive our own reflection after." I sat back and stared at her. That was Marissa. Even now, even here, refusing to turn this into some cheap thrill, refusing to let attraction be an excuse for cowardice. "Do you want to stop?" I asked. Her eyes met mine. And there it was. The question under every question. She answered with painful honesty. "I want 2 impossible things at once." I swallowed. "I want my son safe from hurt," she said. "And I want the way I feel when I'm with you to be real enough to justify the risk." I nodded because there was nothing clean to say back to that. She took a breath and reached into her bag. For a second, I thought she was grabbing her wallet. Instead, she pulled out a small silver key. Not a car key, not a house key. Smaller, worn. She set it on the table between us. I looked at it. "What's that?" "The old storage lock key for the little shed behind the house," she said. "It doesn't open anything now. The lock was changed years ago." She gave a faint smile. "I keep it on my ring because I'm used to carrying things that no longer have a place." I stared at the key, then at her. That right there was the kind of line people remember. The kind that cuts because it sounds too true to belong only to one person. And she slid the key back toward herself. "That's what I'm afraid of, Tyler. Becoming something hidden, something carried in secret. Something that only exists behind closed doors." "No." She blinked. I leaned forward. "No, not that. I won't do that to you. You can't promise outcomes. Maybe not, but I can promise my part." She waited, so I gave her the most honest thing I had. I don't want you in secret, I said. I want you in truth. Even if truth costs me your son's friendship. Even if it costs me both of you. Her face changed. Not because I had solved anything. I hadn't. But because she believed I meant it. And I did. That was the moment I understood what this really was. Not just wanting her. Choosing the damage of honesty over the comfort of hiding. She looked down, then back up. If we do this, and we tell him before he finds out another way. My chest tightened. Soon? Yes. I nodded, even though fear hit me so hard it almost felt physical. Because this was the price. Not someday. Soon. A server came out with a tray and called someone's name at the next table. A car horn blared from the street. Life kept moving around us like nothing had changed. But for me, everything had. What if he hates me? I asked quietly. Marissa's eyes softened. He might. What if he hates you? A longer silence that time. He might, she said. For a while. The thought tore through me. Lucas could hate me. I deserved that. But the idea of him looking at her like she had betrayed him, like she had broken the safe world of his home with her own hands, it was harder to bear. She must have seen that on my face. Tyler, she said gently, our love is not clean. The good kind is not selfish, but it is still costly. I laughed once without humor. That sounds like something people say right before everything blows up. Maybe. Her mouth curved slightly. Or right before they stopped lying. We sat there until the sun dropped lower and the back patio turned gold at the edges. Nobody around us knew they were sitting near two people trying to decide whether honesty would save them or destroy them. In the end, we made a plan. No sneaking around. No more nighttime exits through the back gate. No messages we would be ashamed to read out loud. We would tell Lucas together, not in a dramatic confession, not in a way that made him feel cornered. Just the truth, spoken clearly, once we had the courage to stand inside it. I wish I could say making that plan gave me peace. It didn't, and it gave me weight. That weekend felt like walking toward a cliff with my eyes open. At work on Friday, Lucas was in a great mood. He finally got that girl to agree to go out with him. He spent half the shift talking about where to take her, half joking, half serious. I helped him pick between two shirts by looking at grainy photos on his phone in the break room. Blue one, I said. He grinned. Knew you'd say that. You've got weirdly reliable taste. Reliable. That word nearly crushed me. Then he clapped my shoulder and said, seriously, man, you're a good friend. There are sentences that feel like gifts when you earn them, and like punishment when you don't. I went home that night and stood in my apartment kitchen staring at nothing. My place had never felt emptier. Thin walls, dim light, cheap cabinets, and a sink full of dishes I had forgotten to wash. For the first time, I realized I did not want a life that felt this temporary anymore. Marissa had done that to me. Not by saving me, by seeing me. The next evening, she texted, tomorrow. Lucas will be home after 6. Come at 6:30. We tell him together. I read that message 5 times. Then I set my phone down and sat on the edge of my bed with both hands clasped like I was trying to hold myself in one piece. Tomorrow. There it was. No more almost. No more delay. The next day, I got to the house at 6:28 and sat outside with the engine running. The same driveway, the same blue door, the same basketball hoop. Everything looked exactly like the place where Lucas and I had laughed over games and tacos and work stories. And only now it felt like the site of an impact that had not happened yet. When I finally walked up, Marissa opened the door before I knocked. One look at her face told me she was scared too. But she stepped aside anyway. I entered the house. The smell of dinner still hung in the air. Somewhere down the hall, Lucas was laughing at something on his phone, unaware that his life was about to divide into before and after. Marissa reached for my hand once, quick and low where no one could see. A silent gesture. A promise. Or maybe a plea. Then she let go. Lucas came around the corner, smiling at first. Then he saw us both standing there, and something in his expression changed. Not understanding yet, just instinct. Like some part of him already knew the room was wrong. He looked from me to his mother and back again. "Why do you both look like that?" he asked. No one answered right away, because some moments do not need thunder to feel like the sky is splitting. Marissa took one breath. I took another. And right before the truth left our mouths and changed all three of our lives, one thought hit me with perfect clarity. Some lines ruin you when you cross them. Others ruin you when you pretend you never did.